Hi, it's Debbie from Simply Special Crafts. Today we're going to take a look at tying bows with this simple little bow maker, and I'm going to show you how to create some beautiful decorations for your cards. Okay, there's all different kinds of bow makers in all different sizes. For today I'm going to use this one because it's a nice kind of in-between size, but I wanted to let you know that we have a variety of different sizes. We have a bigger one. The major difference is it has little wider combs, and because of that it can tie a little bit wider bows. We have littler ones that if you're doing primarily card making, these are going to get the job done. There's two different sizes in this one pack. So I just wanted to let you know it's going to work fundamentally the same way regardless of what bow maker you're using. Just for today I'm going to use this one. Start with a very basic bow. I'm using basically I think this is about 1-inch ribbon. This happens to be an organza and it's non-directional, meaning that you can actually see from either side. It isn't going to make any difference. So we're going to start with a very basic bow on this one. If you look at your comb, it's two-sided. The front has this bow symbol on it, and it has numbers across the top. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but trust me, there's little tiny numbers on the tines. That becomes important because that acts as a guide to how wide you want to tie your bow. So we're going to start by threading our ribbon right through this little slot. All that's going to do is give me an extra hand to work with. That's all that little slot does. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to tie a bow at 5. So I'm going to take my ribbon, I'm going to lay it over the top of my comb, I'm going to go around the number 5, and I'm going to come back through around the number 5 from the back of my comb. So again, all I've done is put my ribbon in the slot, go to 5, laying my ribbon over the top, bring it around the back flat, and come right through number 5 again. Now, because I'm just going to tie a really basic bow to begin with, I'm already going to cut this ribbon off. So I'm going to cut it about that long. I'm going to take the tail of my ribbon and I'm going to shove it through to the back of the bow. So all I've done is just put it from the number 5, I've come straight across and gone right through that little hole. Now, if I flip the bow maker over, you see my ribbon coming up through that middle slot where it's open, and I'm just going to go right back through the middle between the two number 1s, and believe it or not, I'm going to tie my bow. I'm done. That's it. That's all there is to it. Watch and see what happens. I'm going to tie my bow. I tie it fairly tight. Pull it off, and look how pretty that is. I've tied a simple bow. Now if I want my center to be a little bit tighter, after I pull it off I can tighten this down a little bit if I want to, if I want my center to be a little tighter. Often I do tighten them up just a bit. And how long I leave my tails will depend on what I'm going to do with the bow. If I think I might tuck it in behind the topper and where I attach the topper to my card, I'll leave my tails a little bit longer. If I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and clip those off. And there's two, you always want to clip your ribbon at an angle. See the angle here? That keeps your ribbon from fraying. There's another nice way you can clip your ribbon, and it's real simple to do. Put it face to face, fold it in half face to face, and then clip upward. And you create like a little whale tail, or I've heard it called a mermaid tail too. So you get that pretty little edge on it. Again, I'm just folding it in half. I'm clipping it upwards. And I get that pretty little whale tail. And look what we just tied. Even walking you through it, it took me seconds to do it. Let's do another one. This time, I'm going to choose the striped ribbon. I just want you to see that it'll work on anything. So I've got my striped ribbon. I'm going to tie another 5. Why? Because I found that that is a really good size for my cards anyway. And we'll look at some examples on those cards that I did with the Paradise Jewels and look at larger and smaller. I flipped this over while I was talking. I'm going to turn it back over so my numbers are up. Okay, I folded this in half to fit it through just because it's kind of a wide ribbon. So I put it in that little slot, the first little slot. I'm going to go to number 5. I'm going to slide it through. I'm going to come back to number 5. I'm going to slide it through. Now, I just have that loop created, right? I'm going to clip my ribbon as soon as I figure out what I did with my scissors. Cut my ribbon off. I'm going to stuff it through the hole from the front side to the back. I'm going to bring my ribbon up between the two number 1s. I'm going to let this one go, pull it up, and I'm going to tie my bow. It's as simple as that. Can you believe that tying a bow could be so easy? Now for years I've been tying bows by hand and they look good. But I have to say I think these look better, and it's so simple and so quick. Pull it off. Look here. How pretty is that? Now this one I think I'll clip at an angle. Why? I don't know. Just because. It seems like the thing to do. Clip this one here. And look at that beautiful bow. Quick and easy. Okay, let's do another. This time, let's do a satin ribbon. Just so we can see how different materials work. This is a 5/8 inch satin ribbon. Put my bow maker so my numbers are towards the top. They're changing the color schemes of these bow makers. Don't worry about it. You might get one that, and you don't really get a choice. You kind of get what I have in stock. But you might get one that's blue. You might get one that's this kind of peach color. And you might get one of the new ones that's raspberry. But they all do exactly the same thing. So I've put my ribbon through my little slot. I'm going to come over here to number 5. I'm going to wrap over around the back and I'm going to come back through 5. I'm going to clip my ribbon and right through the hole, up through the number 1. I'm going to let this tail go from my little holding place there, and I'm going to tie it just like that. I'm going to pull it off my bow maker. I'm going to clip my tail. See, this is what you have if your tails aren't clipped. See that fraying? But if you clip them at an angle, I need to sharpen my scissors. If you clip them at a nice angle, the fraying will be minimal. Isn't that pretty? Okay, let's try something a little different this time. This time, I am going to use 2 ribbons. We have these ribbon packs we're going to offer on special, at least for as long as they last. And these are some of the ribbons that are in most of those packs. So I'm going to lay my ribbons one on top of the other. I lay the little one on top of the big one. I'm not sure it really matters, but I'm going to do that anyway. I'm still putting both ribbons through my bow maker with the tails to the back, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to go to number 5. Obviously, if you want your ribbon to be bigger, go through number 6. If you want it to be a little smaller, go through number 4. I just kind of like the 5. Okay, so I just kept the purple to the top. See that? I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Clip my tails. I'm going to push this through. I'm going to bring these up through number 1. Now here's one really slight difference. I want to look at the front to make sure I'm going to like the way it looks. you know, the way it's folding over the front, and I do like that. You can adjust it a little bit there if you need to, simply by undoing it. And you can turn this a little one way or the other if you need to get it to get a view you really like from the front. I'm going to tie my ends, and all I'm doing is just an overhand, a single layer like you're tying your shoes. Pull them. I'm going to slide it off, and look what we've got with those two layers, the purple and the glittery ribbon. And what I like to do, it depends on how big a space I'm working with. I might just leave it like this because that's really pretty. The other thing you can do is kind of foof them out a little bit, and I like that effect too. I'm going to do this one that way, and then I'm going to clip my tails. You'll notice that I'm clipping them so there's just a little bit of difference in the length, just to kind of draw attention to the fact that there's two ribbons there. How's that for quick and easy, tying with two ribbons at the same time, and isn't that pretty? Okay, I promised to show you how we put on a slide. Let's do that next. Let's make a pink one. I have all these ribbons out so I could kind of show you different kinds of materials. This time I have a piece of organza again. Doesn't really matter what kind of ribbon I'm using as long as it will go through the slide. And I'll show you how we do that in just a minute. Little piece of ribbon left over there. Get rid of that. Okay, so by now you know we're just kind of folding this a little bit. We're putting it in the holder, and all that's doing is just holding that tight while I'm working. Let's make it just a little bit smaller just so you can see. So I put it in the slot, in the little slot there. This time I'm going to go over the number 4. I'm going to come back through the number 4. I'm going to clip my ribbon just as I usually do. In fact, I'm actually going to clip it at a little bit more of an angle. That's going to help me get it through the slide. I'm going to stick it through, and I'll lay my ribbon maker down, or my bow maker down, and I'm going to grab one of my pretty little slides. This is a different one than I showed you before. This one's a little triangle, or a rectangle, excuse me, a little rectangle. And I'm just going to slide that right on top, and just like a buckle, I'm going to go back through the other side, and now I'm going to slide it down into place so it's right where my bow is getting tied. How's that for simple? Right down to the base where I pulled it through. Now I'm going to go back to the other side. I'm going to come back through number 1. I'm going to release this end. I'm going to tie this. Now don't pull this real tight until you see how your ribbon fits through your slide. You don't want to pull it so tight that you pull the ends together, you know what I mean? Leave it loose enough that it shows that you're so that the bar in the middle of the buckle is covered up. And see that cute little bow? Now if I wanted it just a little bit bigger, I actually still can slightly adjust it even though I pulled it off. And I think I'm going to tighten this just a tad. Just a little bit. And look at that beautiful thing. Isn't that pretty? Small and dainty, and it's going to be just right for the right kind of card. And one of the questions that are one of the things that people sometimes say is, you know, how do I get them to be absolutely straight out? You don't necessarily want them all to be straight out. We're going to look at some card samples here in a minute. One of the things I want you to notice when we look at those card samples is that sometimes my bow's tails are at different angles, and it looks beautiful to allow that to happen. If you want them to be straightened out, you can manipulate them till you get these ends exactly straight out from the bow. But they also sometimes look really pretty just to leave them. So there's a buckle. Let's do another. Let's see. Let's come back to one of our satin ribbons. No, that's organza. Let's go back with this one again. I want to show you using a little bit bigger one, a little bit bigger ribbon, and show you what that happens when we do the slide. So, you know the routine by now. We're going to put the end through. I'm going to go, oops, I'm on the wrong side of my comb. How do I know that? Because my numbers weren't there. So I'm going to put my end through. I'm going to come over to my number 5. Again, that's kind of my standard. I'm going to come back through number 5. I'm going to trim the end of my ribbon. Again, I'm going to put it at a fairly sharp angle to make it easy to feed it through my slide. And here we go. I'm going to use one of these rounds this time. I'm just going to, can you follow Britt? Okay. Brittany's on the camera today. Say hi, Brittany.
Hi.
She loves it when I do these things to her. I just appreciate her coming and helping me out. She's a jewel. Okay, so this one kind of doubled to go through. That's okay. Let's go back to the front, bring the tail back through between the two ones. We're going to tie it. Go there. And tie it fairly tight because this is a big ribbon. I'm going to come back to the other side. I'm going to looky there. Now how's that? Now this one got a little bit kinked, the end. So just twist it a little bit. Just twist it a little bit. They'll be fine. Just twist them a little bit. And you can lay it out nice and flat again. See there? Perfect. We have a perfect bow. Let's switch pairs of scissors because those are annoying me. Put it at a little bit of an angle. A little bit of an angle. How pretty is that? Okay, so we've done that one. Next, let's try something totally different. Let's try crocheted ribbon. I did not know you could do this with the bow maker till I tried this, and it works great. So I have this beautiful crocheted ribbon you saw in the video. We're going to do exactly the same thing. I'm not going to try and put a slide on this one. For obvious reasons, the ribbon itself is really bulky. It'll still slide in there and hold okay. I think I'm still going to use a 5 just for the sake of illustration. Let's tie the same size bow. I put it on the back side again. When you go to, if you've got the comb backwards, you're going to tell it when your numbers aren't there. Okay, I'm going to go through my number 5. I'm going to come around the back. I'm going to come back through number 5. I'm going to lay it over the top, just like we've done. Trim it at an angle. Shove the end through. I'm going to bring it right up between my number 1s. I'm going to tie it just like I have been tying it. Can you see how you could, if you're doing invitations for a wedding or graduation cards or something like that, you could tie a lot of bows in a really short time? Here's that beautiful ribbon. Look at that. Isn't that something? I love that. Now, who'd have thought you could do that on a thing that looks a lot like a pick comb? But the thing that makes this work so well is that this hole in the center and then being open clear up to the top so that you can tie right through it. But isn't that pretty? Okay. Let's try something different. This time, let's tie a bow that has multiple layers of ribbon. You saw some of these in the video, so I want to do the same thing for you. Okay, I'm just going to grab some white organza here, because I used a lot of white bows. White's a great color, obviously, because it's so neutral, you can put it on anything. Okay, here we go. I put my tail through. I'm going to come through 5. I'm going to wrap it around. If I get out of camera range, Brittany, you can just smack me and tell me to behave. Okay. Now, instead of going through, I'm just going to come through again. I'm going to go right over the top of that last bow. I'm going to come back again. Now I have 2 loops. I'm going to pull it nice and snug. I'm going to go through again. I'm going to come back through number 5 again. Now I'm going to have 3 loops on my bow. Come to the bottom. It's still going to have 1 loop going over the center. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to shove this through. Well, maybe. I'm going to shove that ribbon through there. If we wanted to put a slide on, you can still do that, even on a foofy bow. Let's do it. Let's put this little, I have these really pretty little pearl buckles. Now they look really small, don't they? But they work great. Even with ribbon that's quite a lot larger. I think this is a 1-inch ribbon, and we're putting it through a 3/8 inch slide. It'll just gather the fabric and make it look nice. So it's okay. These little slides are very reasonably priced. We have them available in the store, or will have by the time you see this video. We have them available in the store, and they sell for $2.99 for 25 of the little slides, so you can make a lot of bows at a very, very reasonable price. I'm also going to have some terrific bargains on ribbon, so watch for that. Okay, I've put my slide on. I'm going to come back. I'm going to tie it off in the back. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. 1 loop is all it takes. And here we come back to the front. Now, it's beautiful just like that, just with the layered effect, and you could certainly use it that way. If you want to, you can also fan out these little loops and make kind of what you've heard me call in the past my foofy bows. We make a foofy bow out of it just by separating the petals here. How's that for beautiful? Can you imagine doing that any faster? Again, I've tied these bows by hand in the past, and I can tie a bow that looks pretty. It's no prettier than this, and I can tell you it's never been that fast. Trim my little tails. How pretty is that? They just don't get prettier than that. So, we have looked at almost everything. Oh, let's try some directional ribbon. You can do grosgrain ribbon with this. This bow happens to say Merry Christmas, and I can do a plain grosgrain ribbon. In fact, let's do that. Then we'll do a second one, and we'll add a second ribbon to this because I think they're prettier. Grosgrain's not my personal favorite, but you know, it is what it is. A lot of people like it, and a lot of people have a lot of grosgrain ribbon in their collections, so let's teach you how to use it. It doesn't really matter that Merry Christmas is upside down right here, because my ribbon can get turned, my bow can get turned either way I want, so don't get caught up in whether the words are right side up. Let's go through let's do number 4. Number 4, back around, trim it off, put my tail through the little hole, run up here, number one, tie it off. Now, this is actually an important consideration right here. You can see that as I'm pulling that tail through, this is a directional ribbon, so my words are going to be on the wrong side of one of these loops. Now I'm actually looking at the back right now, so what I want is to be looking at the back, right? So I'm just turning this one over so that my words will be on the right side when we look at this from the front of the bow maker. You with me? So I flatten these out, and I should be looking at the back of the ribbon from here. Here we go. Slide it off. Yeah, I want this to be a little tighter. See that? That's kind of loose. I'm just going to lay it down. I'm going to pull a little on those tails and tighten that up a bit. And it tried to turn a little bit on me again. I'm simply going to flatten them back out, manipulate the ribbon a little bit, make it turn back the way you want it to. And I have a Merry Christmas bow. That when I turn it upside down, of course I made the whole thing upside down, but when I turn it the other way around, it says Merry Christmas in the right direction. So there's a grosgrain bow. And I said before, this isn't my favorite. It would work really nicely for the right card, you know, kind of an informal card. It would look fine. But let's make it a little foofier just for fun. Let's take another grosgrain ribbon. I like this one better, so let's use this one. I don't dislike that one, it's just a matter of what you like. Let's pull a little off the reel here. I'm going to use some of this red sparkly ribbon with that. you figured out by now after that Paradise Jewels, I really like sparkly stuff. Okay, I'm going to put both of my ribbons through that little slot. And I'm going to bring them over. I just kind of pulled them together, flattened them out a little bit. I'm going to bring them over. I'm going to do my number 5. I'm going to come back around. I'm going to do number 5. I'm going to snip off the ends. I'm going to push them through. I'm going to pull them back. I'm going to check and see how it's going to look from the front. I kind of want that grosgrain to be on top and my wider my wider ribbon to be underneath. So I'm going to just make sure it's coming through that way, turn it a little bit if I need to. I'm going to come right back to the front or back where we're working. I'm going to pull that through. I'm going to loosen my tails over here. I'm going to tie this, paying attention to what I want to be on the front, right? So as I go to tie this side's going to look good. This side needs to be turned so that it's facing the right direction. You with me? Now that's kind of a bulky bow because it's bulky ribbon and I have a double layer. Not going to hurt my comb doing that. Don't worry about that. And slide it off. And you can see this part in the middle doesn't look as good as I think it should. So I'm going to just tighten that up a little bit more. You can do that. It's doable. Now when I did that, this side slid just a bit. You can see this is a little bit more challenging, but it's fine. It's doable. Okay. I'm going to turn this a little bit so the sides I want show. Okay. I'm going to clip these off. And I'm going to open up my loops a little bit because this could be prettier. So I'm going to open these loops up a little bit. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to open these loops up a little bit. I'll trim these tails a little bit. If I want my ribbons to be out straight to the sides, I can keep manipulating the tails to bring them till they behave and lay down flat. You can also use your adhesive for that purpose. But there we go. There's a ribbon using both grosgrain and sparkly ribbon together. And again, you know, you can kind of combine a lot of things and just try any number of different materials. You're going to find yourself wanting to just tie all kinds of stuff just to see how it looks, and that's a good thing. You can even use, like, I don't have some here to show you a demo, but you can even use twine kind of stuff and raffia to tie a bow with lots of loops. So experiment and try some of those things. I have one more demo, and then we're going to look at some samples. Okay, this is the next ribbon we're going to try. And you're going to think, wow, what are we going to do with that? Well, here we go. It's kind of this lacy trim. Isn't that pretty? I've fed it in just like I normally do. I'm going to go to 5. Now you can see this is a little bulkier. It makes me kind of pull it in there, but it's doable. I'm going to go around the... Did I hit a 4 or a 5? I hit a 4. Let's go around the 5. I'm going to do another loop. Go back around the 5, and go around the 5 again. So I've got 3 loops on each side. I'm going to clip it. I'm going to shove it through. I'm going to pull it around just like I did before. I'm going to come back through the ones. I'm going to release this side. I'm just really holding on since it's such a nice thick material. I'm going to tie it. Pull it tight. I'm going to pull it off my comb. I'm going to pull my loops out. I'm going to tighten it just a bit more because it is a really big bulky material. I want it to be nice and tight. And looky there. Is that going to be pretty on something or what? I think that's gorgeous. So there we go. There's our bow samples. Let's take a look at some cards using those samples. First, we'll look at the cards with the simple bows. These are the same ones we saw in the Paradise Tools video. Simple bow, note the tails. One comes down here, one goes up there, and isn't that pretty? Look here, same thing. I do a lot of that because I think it looks really artsy to let the tails go in different directions. Here's one where I've got the mermaid tail clipped to the ribbon. Here's one where it's fairly out to the side, although my tails are at the top instead of at the bottom. Nothing wrong with it. I like that effect. Next, here's some that have the little slides in them that we have just done. Here's one out of a satiny ribbon. It doesn't have a slide, but isn't that pretty? That silvery finish. I love that. Here's another slide. Now when you buy your slides, be careful because some slides are directional. See my heart? This heart, because the buckle is vertical from top to the bottom of the heart, it ties sideways. If that doesn't bother you, that's fine. That one kind of bothers me. So when I use these hearts, I'm going to use them on a piece of ribbon that's run this way through it, so my hearts are right side up. See what I mean? I'll just use these as embellishments on a piece of ribbon instead of tying them into a bow. But watch for that. Let's look at some more examples here actually on the cards. Here is one of those that I made a foofy bow, but I didn't spread out the petals. This has 3 layers. See that? That's a much thicker, but I like the way it looked as kind of a deep solid tone, even though it was in that organza ribbon. Same thing here. This is I actually have 3 layers of that pink ribbon, and in this case I put a little snowflake in the center. I wanted to kind of emulate the water lilies. We're going to have some of these available soon in the store. So we tied our pretty crochet bow. Here's an example of using that. And this one, you'll remember we left the tails long, and then we matted this piece on foam tape so we could wrap the tails right around this piece that's attached to my mirror board. And because the foam tape's under there, we don't even have a funny mouse there. It's lifted just like everything else, just the bows are tucked behind this. And this has a 1/2-inch piece of red liner super tape under it to hold that firmly in place. But isn't that gorgeous on there? You can actually tie those bows with another piece in there too. We did that on this one, so we added the glitter to this crocheted bow. And we saw that one. Now, I want to take just a moment here, talk to you about attaching your bows. Lots and lots of you took me up on my recommendation that we use super glue, or best glue ever. This is what it looks like. It comes in this nice bottle. Generally, the rule of thumb with best glue ever is a little bit goes a long way, and that's still the case here. But I just wanted to show you how I'm putting my bow on. I took one off to put it back on, and we had to really jerk on it to get it off. This stuff dries tacky, so this is like, right now, this is like a glue dot there. But I'm just going to add a little glue here. Just a thin line of glue to my card. Maybe, there it is. I'm going to add a thin line of glue to my card and let that start setting up. I'm going to add the liquid glue to my bow, and then I'm going to let it sit for a moment. Because what I want it to do, now this glue is going to get clear down in the fibers of this ribbon. So this will end up being like using a glue dot to hold my bow, with the exception of the fact that the glue dot's not going to let go of the bow because it's actually now down in those little fibers. And it dries clear, so we don't have to worry if it shows a little bit, although you do want to be careful it doesn't get on the front, because this doesn't dry. It stays tacky forever, and because of that, you would need to glitter your bow or do something creative if you get any on the front, because it's going to stay tacky. But I would actually normally leave this out for 5 minutes or so, let that get really, really tacky, and then just put it right into the glue that we put on our card. And I'm going to hold it there for just a moment. Really let those bits of glue get bonded together. And if it looks, some bows are just as we've seen, are bulkier than others, and some are more cooperative about laying flat than others. If it's not going to lay completely flat while it dries, just put your comb, a book, another card, something on it. Keep that bow flat and in that glue while it dries thoroughly. And I would give that probably at least an hour to set completely. If it's still tacky at all, you can pull it off. But once it's done, it's just not going anywhere. Again, as I said, these bows are anchored. They're just not going anywhere. I had to really pull to get this one off. So those will stay really nicely using that best glue ever. Now I want to transition just a little bit and look back at this card where I used the pins. A lot of people have expressed interest in knowing how to make the pins and how to use them, so that's the next thing we're going to talk about. We've had lots of inquiries about these little stick pins and where to get them. And I am putting some finished pins out in the store because some of my customers have communicated quite clearly that they don't intend to make their own. They want me to make them. So I've made some and I have some finished pins available in the store. But I also want to walk through with you quickly how quick and easy it is to make your own, and they'll be significantly less expensive. So let's take a look at how we do that. You're only going to need a few supplies to get this job done. You'll need some color beads. I like to use Aurora Borealis beads wherever possible because they really catch and pick up the light. They don't have to be. If you have little colored crystal beads at home, use those. When I say crystal, I'm using that term lightly. They can be either the acrylic or the acrylic ones, or they can be glass ones. Glass are really, really pretty because they really capture the light, but they're also a lot more expensive. So again, use what you have if you have them at home. If you don't have them at home, then we'll have a selection of the beads and maybe some kits put on the website soon for you to be able to purchase them without having to buy a lot of each kind of material. So I'm going to use some little colored beads. We're going to want some, I like to use clear beads with the colors. You can use clear, you can use metallics, you can use whatever, but you'll want some kind of variation. So I'll put some clear beads on. And I like to have a variety of sizes, so I'm going to pour some of my little beads on here as well. These are little bicones, but you can use whatever you have available. And then the pins that we have available and will have available in the store come in these bulk packs. When you look at them, don't be disappointed if you see that some of the pins are slightly bent and that kind of thing. For our purposes here, because we're not using them for jewelry, we're using them to put pins in our cards. They don't have to be big, strong pins, and they don't have to be expensive pins. These are very easily manipulated by hand. So if it's a little bent, you can bend it out yourself. If it's too bent to use, occasionally you'll find one in these discount packs that is just defective. I don't know if you can see that, but the ball's not clearly formed on that one. I'm just going to throw that away. It's, just a matter of sense and probably not worth my time to try and do something with that. So I'm going to get rid of that one. But don't be concerned if some of the pins come out bent. Again, these are like over 20 gauge wire. So they're thin, they're easily bent, but they're just fine for our purposes. They're not going to take a lot of use and abuse on our cards. So you need little pins. Let's put a couple together. This is the glue that I like to use. It's from Quilt Creations. They're available in our store in a 3-pack, or those of you that purchase the kits will get a single tube. Now, this is a little tiny tube. Look at that in my hand. It's a little tiny tube. One tube, I can tell you, is enough to do hundreds of your bead pins, so you don't need to go crazy and buy a lot of this. You can just buy one tube will get you a long ways. When you get it, do what you just saw me do. Clip the end off until you see the opening, and always make sure it gets recapped after use. I do want to warn you that this is really strong glue, and because it's super strong, be sure you wipe the stem off when you're done using it before you recap it, or it's going to glue your cap in place. It's really tough stuff. It's surprising to me that something that's called crystal coat glaze is as tough as it is, but it's super tough. So we'll recap that till we're ready to use it. And my process is really simple. I dump everything in a little plate so I've got it in control. And then I just load up my bead pen. I like to start with a small one at the end. I have a couple different sizes of beads in here. While I'm putting these on, let's talk a little bit about the sizes of beads. Try and keep them small for most of your bead projects for regular size cards. If there's a mistake to be made using pens and cards, it's letting the pens overwhelm the rest of the card. If your bow and your focal, or excuse me, if your bow is going to be the focal of your card, you know that's the main element in your card, you could use larger bead pens. Or if you're making a really large card, like a 7x7 or an 8x8 or an A4, a 8.5 by 11 style card, certainly a great big bead pen is going to be appropriate for those times. However, for a standard size card, you don't want anything much larger than about that. These pens that I'll have available in the kits are just 2 inches. You don't want any more than 1 inch of beads. And this is plenty. 5 little beads on a pen is plenty to get the job done. Let's look at our peacock again. You can see that with 3 bead pens in that card, that's just all that wants. It would be too much if these were sticking clear out into the card. See what I mean? Now, not to say that the larger ones can't be used, and if you have a stash of larger beads in your collection, again, with really large cards, or when that bow is the focal point of your card and you're not covering up your design, then certainly you can use the larger ones. I'll have a few larger ones available too. Let me show you what I like to do with my larger ones. Lots and lots of you took advantage of our special on the tattered lace detail glue, and you've got this little cap on that glue that just screws onto the end. Well, once you put that cap on the end, this little glue cap doesn't seal your bottle anymore. I like to take those big pens, stick it right down inside my bottle, and seal it while I'm working. And I can keep it this way for a week, 2 weeks, as long as my materials are out. When I'm ready to store it, I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to take this tip back off, wash it up, and clean it so that it stays good. And then I'll recap my bottle with the regular cap. But they work great for that. Okay, so I've got my beads loaded on my pen. I'm going to take my glue, and here's a little tip. When you go to glue it, slide your last bead back just a tad and put just the tiniest amount. Can you see what I'm doing there? Just the tiniest, even that's a lot. Just the tiniest amount of glue there. Slide that bead back in place. And what you've done is twofold. One, you are certainly stopping everything, but you're kind of hiding the glue under that last bead, and it's going to bond together with that second one, and they're both going to help hold your beads in place. And then stand them up, oops, or set them down carefully somewhere. I guess they don't have to be standing up, but make sure they don't get disturbed for a minute or two, and let that glue really set. Now when I'm making these, a lot of times I like to make them in varying patterns using the same materials, but slightly different patterns, just because it adds kind of an element of interest. So if you buy some of the bead packs we have ready-made, you'll find that in most cases I will have varied the pattern a little bit from pen to pen. Like, I want some little ones like this. Maybe just 3 beads on this one. And again, I'm going to put just a little bit of my glue there. I'm going to let it slide, my bead slide back in place, and that's going to anchor that really well against the post and against the bead in front of it. That's not going to go anywhere. And it hides the glue, so the glue isn't showing around your bead. Okay, one more here. And then we're going to actually attach some beads to our card. Hardest part is finding the little holes in these tiny beads. And again, you can kind of vary those. I wouldn't use beads much larger than about 8 millimeter. An 8 millimeter is fine, but if you go much larger than that, they're going to overwhelm your card. So this time I'm going to use 5 beads in just a little bit different design and just use one larger blue one. And I'm going to put my little spot of glue there. Just a tiny amount. I'm going to slide that over the top, and that's going to anchor that really well. Let's let that dry for just a second, then we're going to put it on our card. Okay, let's go ahead and assemble a card using our completed pens. I'm going to put some foam squares down on the corner of my card where I'm going to want my bow to go. I'm going to put down 3 2 millimeter squares. I'm going to peel that first section, which isn't always easy to do. One of our customers recently talked about the beauty of tape in her review, and the beauty of tape is you don't have to pull off all these little individual tabs, which is nice. But you have to cut it, so it's a trade-off. So I'm going to stack 2 squares high, right where I want my bead to go. And then just to add, everything's nice and tacky, just to eliminate any possibility that this ever wants to move, I'm going to put just a little bit of Best Glue Ever right on top of my squares. Come on, I'm going to use my glue bottle. Oh! And I do mean just a little, so I'm going to spread that around a little bit. I'm going to let that start getting tacky. And I talked about using the Best Glue Ever on your bows. Now, Best Glue Ever is a fabulous glue product because it stays tacky when it's wet. But its greatest asset, let's see, that's going to get clear down in those fibers of the bow. It's not going to release like a lot of glues do. You know, a lot of glues don't want to hold on to fabric. But the benefit of the Best Glue Ever is also its downfall depending on its use. Because it does dry tacky, you don't want little overglued places showing on the front of your card because it's going to be sticky. Now, every once in a while, that happens to me. It happens to everybody. And if I have a glittered card, I'm going to sprinkle just a tiny little bit of glitter over that. And I'm going to stop that from being sticky. If it's in a more conspicuous place, the other thing you can do is use just a tiny, tiny bit of powder. Put it over where you want to deactivate the glitter, or deactivate the glue. You can also do that if you're trying to use a sticker somewhere and the sticker's going across the edge of your card. You can also use a little bit of powder to deactivate the sticky on your stickers. Just a little helpful hint there. You can tell I'm stalling. I'm stalling just a bit because I want this glue to get tacky in both places. And I think we probably are pretty close, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on. If I was doing that and you weren't watching, I probably would let that sit for another minute or two. But just for the sake of moving things along here, I'm going to go ahead and stick my bow in there. And now I'm going to take our pretty little stick pins that we just made, and I'm going to start positioning those into this card. Now I'm going to put my stick pins, oops, slid on me because I didn't let it dry completely. Should have allowed it probably an hour before I did that, but you'll know. I'm just going to stick my pretty little stick pin right in there. And I'm going to stick, I usually recommend that you use 2 or maybe 3 stick pins. I don't think I've ever used more than that. Oops. I'm going to get it into the foam and just slide it right in. And I think in this one, I might just be satisfied with 2 stick pins, although I certainly could use a 3rd if I wanted to. In fact, actually, I really like that sticking up there high. I think I'm going to do that. And I'm going to stick my stick pin right into the foam. And I actually really, really like the way, again, yours won't be moving quite as much as your beads won't be moving because you will have let yours set. I like the way that looks with kind of that arch there. I'm going to set this aside and let this dry, and that is going to be amazing. So again, neither my stick pins nor my bow would be moving much if I was giving it a little more time. The other thing I should have done and I didn't do here, although I think they're sticking really nicely, is it's good to put a little dab of glue on the end of your pin when you stick it in, and that just precludes any possibility those pins are going to try and work their way out. But isn't that beautiful? Look what we added just by putting those little stick pins in there. So that's how you make the stick pins. It's quick, it's easy, it's inexpensive. We'll have both the pins and the kits available in the store, and I hope you find that useful. This has been Debbie from Simply Special Crafts. You can get any of these materials available in our store at simplyspecialcrafts.com. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already done so, because I'll send you a supplies list along with a link to any videos that we do. So we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.